I'm Marigold Kessler, but call me Mari. At 28, I thought I'd cracked the code to my family's game. Keep quiet, stay out of the spotlight, and maybe they'd see me. But in that Chicago office, all glass and sharp edges, my world split open. The will reading was supposed to be routine, just another formality after my parents' sudden passing. The lawyer, a man with a voice like worn leather, sat at the head of the table. My sister, Daphne, 26, perched beside me, her designer scarf catching the light. She was all polish, her smile practiced, her eyes already counting dollars. My parents' will came down like a guillotine. To Daphne Kessler, we leave $15 million in trust, effective immediately. 15 million. The number hung in the air, heavy as the silence that followed. Daphne's hand brushed her hair, a victory flick. My aunt and uncle, standing in for my parents, nodded like they'd expected it. Then the lawyer's eyes flicked to me. "To Marigold Kessler," he said, pausing just long enough for hope to flicker. "Our advice, make your own way." The words cut clean, no blood, just a hollow ache. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I stared at the table, its polished surface reflecting my face back like a stranger's. My pulse pounded, but I kept my hands still. I'd always been the odd one, the girl who'd rather dig in the dirt than wear a crown like Daphne. But this was a public disowning. Then the lawyer cleared his throat, a sound like gravel shifting. "There's one more thing," he said. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small wooden box, its lid carved with my name, Marigold, in my grandfather's steady, looping script. My aunt's smile vanished. My uncle's jaw tightened. Daphne leaned forward, her nails digging into her palm. "This was left with strict instructions," the lawyer said. "It can only be opened by Miss Kessler with the key held by her grandmother, Esther." My breath caught. Esther? I hadn't seen her in over a year. My family said she was too frail, too busy, too done with me. But that box, small and heavy with secrets, said otherwise. Why had they kept me from her? What was inside? The questions clawed at me, sharp and insistent. My family's faces weren't just shocked, they were scared. And that fear, raw and unguarded, lit a spark in me. I stood, my chair scraping the floor like a warning shot. "I'm going to her," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. The lawyer handed me a note with an address in rural Illinois, his eyes unreadable. "She's waiting for you." Daphne's gaze burned into me, but she said nothing. My aunt and uncle muttered about schedules, but I was already moving, the box tucked under my arm, its weight pulling me forward. Outside, Chicago's wind stung my cheeks, but I welcomed it. My grandfather, the one man who saw me when I was invisible, had left me something. A key, a truth, a chance to unravel the lies my family had woven to keep me small. I gripped the box tighter, my boots hitting the pavement with purpose. I was headed to that farmhouse. I was going to find out what they didn't want me to know. Don't go anywhere. This story's just getting started, and the truth is sharper than a blade. If you're hooked, smash that subscribe button on our YouTube channel for more stories that hit you where it hurts. What's in the box? Why did my family shut me out? You'll want to see this through. The Illinois farmhouse loomed at the end of a dirt road, its weathered clapboard glowing faintly under a gray sky. I was 28, but stepping out of my car, the box still heavy in my arms, I felt like a kid again, nervous, small, chasing my grandfather's shadow through fields of corn and secrets. The air smelled of damp earth, the kind that clings to your boots and your memories. I hadn't been here in over a year. My parents, Richard and Evelyn,
told me Esther, my grandmother, was too frail for visitors, her days filled with nurses and quiet. I'd believe them, fool that I was. The porch creaked under my weight, the same warped boards I used to leap over as a girl. Wind chimes dangled, their notes sharp and lonely. I knocked. The door swung open, and there she was, Esther, 75, her eyes like chipped flint. "So, you finally showed up," she said, her voice slicing through the silence. Her arms were crossed, her frame smaller than I remembered, but her gaze pinned me in place. No warmth, no relief, just a wall of something I couldn't read. "Grandma, what's going on?" I stepped closer, clutching the box. "They said you didn't want to see me, that you were too sick." Her lips tightened, and for a moment, her eyes flickered. Hurt, maybe, or betrayal. "They lied, Mary," she said. "They gave me a fake address, told you it moved to Boston, wanted nothing to do with us." My chest tightened like someone had yanked the air out of me. "That's not true," I whispered. "I called. I wrote. I came by last spring." Esther's jaw clenched. "Daphne was here. Said you were too busy chasing some city life." She turned, her step slow but deliberate, and disappeared into the house. I followed, the air inside thick with dust and memory. She returned with a rusted key, its edges worn but glinting faintly in the dim light. "This was his," she said, pressing it into my hand. "For that box. He hid it in the fireplace, said it was only for you." My fingers closed around the key, cold and heavy. The fireplace? I glanced at the stone hearth, its blackened edges holding years of my grandfather's stories, tales of soil that remembered, plants that whispered. I knelt, my hands shaking as I traced the loose brick he'd once shown me, a secret we shared when I was 10. It slid free, revealing a small compartment. Inside, a folded letter, yellowed but uncreased, and a USB drive with marigold scrawled on it. My throat burned. "He called for you," Esther said, her voice softer now, breaking. "Every day, Mary, he thought you'd forgotten him." I stood, the letter and drive in my hands, my vision blurring. "I didn't know," I said. "They told me he was fine until the end. I got to the hospital and it was too late." Esther sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "They told me you didn't care, that you skipped his funeral." The funeral. I'd arrived at the church at dusk, the pews empty, the flowers gone. They said it was at 6.
It was at noon. The lie settled in my bones, cold and final. I looked at the key, the letter, the drive. My family hadn't just pushed me away, they'd erased me. But my grandfather hadn't. He'd left me this, a tether to the truth. Esther's eyes met mine, fierce again. "We're opening that box, Marie, and then we're calling them here." Her voice was a blade, cutting through my doubt. I nodded, my heart racing. Whatever was in that box, whatever truth my grandfather had locked away, it was mine to claim. And I wasn't waiting another day. The fireplace compartment gave way with a soft scrape, revealing a dust-covered hollow. My fingers, still gripping the rusted key, trembled as I pulled out a folded letter and a USB drive, both marked with my name in my grandfather's steady hand. I was 28, but in that moment, I was 10 again, hiding notes in this very hearth, giggling with him about secrets only we shared. Esther stood behind me, her shadow long across the farmhouse floor. "He left those for you, Marie," she said, her voice low, like she was afraid to break the spell. I unfolded the letter first. The paper smelled of old ink and time, his words sharp and deliberate. Find the truth. They tried to take it from you. My stomach twisted. I plugged the USB into my laptop, the screen flickering to life. There he was, Grandpa. His face thinner than I remembered, eyes bright despite the hospital gown. "Marigold," he said, his voice warm but firm. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone. But you need to know what they did." My breath hitched. Esther sank into a chair, her hands clasped tight.
"They tried to sell my patents," he said. "Richard, Evelyn, Daphne, they thought you weren't worth my legacy. They forged letters, told me you'd moved away, didn't care. I knew better." My heart pounded, a mix of rage and grief. Patents? He'd spent decades researching sustainable crops, ways to feed people when the land turned cruel. They wanted to cash it out, erase his work, and me. Then the twist came, sharp as a blade. "I built you something," he said, leaning closer to the camera. "A greenhouse, hidden on the back acre. It's yours, Mari. Your mind, your heart. It's where my work lives now." "A greenhouse?" I pressed a hand to my mouth, tears stinging. He'd built me a home for my dreams, the ones my family mocked when I sketched plant cycles instead of prom dresses. Esther's voice broke the silence. "They told me you changed your number, moved to Boston. I believed them." Her eyes were wet, her hands shaking. "I should have known you'd never abandon him." I turned to her, the USB still warm in my palm. "They lied about the funeral, too," I said, my voice cracking. "They said it was at 6. I got there and the church was empty." Her face crumpled. "It was at noon. They told everyone you didn't show." The room spun. I gripped the letter, its edges biting my fingers. They hadn't just cut me off, they'd rewritten me, made me the daughter who didn't care. But Grandpa saw through it. He'd seen me, always, even when I doubted myself. I looked at the USB, the letter, the key. Each was a piece of a puzzle my family didn't want me to solve. "What else could they do?" I asked, my voice harder now. Esther stood, her frail frame suddenly fierce. "They tried to sell his work to some agribusiness. He stopped them, rewrote his will. That's why they kept you away." My blood ran cold. They hadn't just erased me from his life. They tried to steal his legacy, the one he trusted me to carry. I clutched the letter tighter, his words burning in my mind. Find the truth. I would, and they'd face it. Esther's hand touched my shoulder, steady as stone. "We're playing that video for them. All of them." I nodded, my jaw tight. The greenhouse, the patents, the lies, it was all coming to light. My family thought they'd buried me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The farmhouse kitchen smelled of coffee and old wood, the kind of scent that lingers like a memory you can't shake. I sat at the table, the USB drive and my grandfather's letter in front of me, their weight heavier than the locked box now tucked under my arm. I thought I'd mastered keeping my anger in check, but it simmered now, hot and sharp, as Esther dialed the old rotary phone on the wall. Each click of the dial felt like a countdown. "Richard, Evelyn, Daphne," she said, her voice cold as winter. "Get to the farmhouse, now." A muffled voice protested, my aunt probably, with her usual excuses. Esther cut her off. 1 hour. Bring the lawyer." She hung up, the receiver clicking like a door slamming shut. I looked at her, my grandmother, 75, her hands steady despite the lines etched deep in her face. "You didn't tell them I'm here?" I said. She nodded, her eyes glinting. "Let them walk in blind."
My stomach churned, a mix of dread and something fiercer, resolve maybe. I'd spent years dodging my family's dismissals, their sighs when I talked about soil or science. Now I'd face them with Grandpa's truth in my hands. Esther sat across from me, her fingers tracing the table's worn edge. "There's something else," she said, her voice softer but no less firm. "Your grandfather didn't just leave you that greenhouse. He paid for your education, every class, every lab, every trip to those conferences you loved." My breath caught. I thought those scholarships were random, lucky breaks. "He funneled the money through a trust," she said. "Your parents never knew." The revelation hit like a spark in dry grass. All those late nights studying, those flights to present my research on plant resilience, Grandpa had been there, quietly lifting me up while my family told me I was chasing pipe dreams. My hands clenched, the letter crinkling under my fingers. "Why didn't he tell me?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "He wanted you to earn it," Esther said, "not feel indebted. He believed in you, Mari, more than you knew." Her words landed soft but heavy, like rain on parched ground. I thought of the greenhouse, hidden on the back acre, a secret he'd built just for me. My family had tried to erase me, but he carved my name into his legacy. Footsteps crunched outside, too early for them. My heart jumped. Esther stood, moving to the window. "It's Mr. Caldwell, the lawyer," she said. "He's got something else, another document, sealed, from your grandfather." My pulse quickened. Another document? The USB and letter were already a bomb. What else had he left? Caldwell stepped inside, his briefcase snapping open with a sound that echoed in the quiet. He pulled out a sealed envelope, marked with my grandfather's initials. "This is to be read with everyone present," he said, his eyes flicking to me. I nodded, my throat tight. The air felt electric, like the moment before a storm breaks.
I traced the edge of the locked box, its carved letters rough under my fingertips. My parents, my sister, they were coming, expecting to claim their victory. They didn't know I was here, didn't know about the video, the greenhouse, or this new envelope. I wasn't just the overlooked daughter anymore. I was the one holding the key, the truth, the future. Esther's hand brushed mine. "You ready, Mari?" she asked. I met her gaze, my fear burning away. "I've been ready my whole life," I said. The doorbell rang, sharp and final. They were here, and I wasn't hiding anymore. The farmhouse living room felt too small, the air thick with the scent of old books and tension. I sat in a worn armchair, the locked box on my lap, its carved letters grounding me. I'd learned to keep my face steady, but my heart raced as my parents, Richard and Evelyn, both in their late 50s, stepped inside, their faces tight with irritation. Daphne, 26, trailed behind, her designer scarf a splash of color against her pale expression. They didn't see me at first, not until Esther's voice cut through. "Sit," she said, sharp as a whip. Their eyes found me and the room froze. My mother's smile cracked. My father's hand twitched at his collar. Daphne's mouth parted, but no words came. They hadn't expected me here, hadn't expected the USB drive in Mr. Caldwell's hand or the sealed envelope on the table. I kept my gaze steady, my back straight. If they thought I'd shrink, they were wrong. Mr. Caldwell plugged the USB into a small projector, and my grandfather's face filled the wall, larger than life, his eyes bright despite the hospital pallor. "Marigold," he began, his voice warm like summer earth after rain. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. But I need you to know the truth." My mother shifted, her fingers twisting her necklace. Daphne stared at the floor. "They tried to sell my patents," he said, his tone hardening. "Your parents, your sister, They thought your work, your mind, wasn't worth my legacy. They forged letters to keep you away. My chest burned, but I didn't look at them. I built you a greenhouse, Mari, on the back acre. It's yours, along with $7.5 million, half my estate. A gasp broke the silence, not mine. Daphne's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. My father's jaw clenched, his calm unraveling. My mother whispered, "That's impossible." But Grandpa's voice pressed on. "The other half goes to Daphne, but there's a clause. Anyone who contests this will loses their share." The room went still, the weight of his words like a locked gate.
Then came the twist, soft but piercing. "Mari, I saw you," he said, his eyes locking onto mine through the screen. "I saw your heart, your questions, the way you studied life when they only saw failure. I knew they lied about you. This is your place to grow, without their shadows." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. His belief in me, clear and unshakable, was louder than their silence ever was. Mr. Caldwell paused the video, his voice calm but firm. "There's more," he said, picking up the sealed envelope. "Walter left a personal directive for Marigold to be read aloud." My mother's face paled. Daphne's hands gripped her chair. I felt their fear, sharp and electric, but I didn't flinch. I'd spent years swallowing their dismissals, my sketches of crop cycles called childish, my passion for soil mocked. Now their lies were crumbling. Esther stood beside me, her hand light on my shoulder. "Go on," she said to Caldwell. He nodded, breaking the envelope seal. I looked at my family, their eyes avoiding mine, and felt something shift, not anger, but clarity. Grandpa had seen me when they refused to. He'd built me a future they couldn't touch. The room hummed with unspoken questions. What was in that envelope? How much deeper did their betrayal go? I sat taller, the box warm under my hands. They thought they'd written me out of this story, but I was the one holding the pen now. The farmhouse living room crackled with tension, the air sharp as a held breath. I sat with the locked box in my lap, its carved letters a quiet anchor. I'd spent years dodging my family's dismissals, but now, with Grandpa's video still echoing in my ears, I was done hiding. My parents, Richard and Evelyn, sat rigid, their faces pale. Daphne, 26, clutched her scarf, her eyes darting like a trapped bird's. Mr. Caldwell opened the sealed envelope, his voice steady as he read. "To Marigold, my granddaughter, I leave my trust, my greenhouse, and my belief in you. You are never less, only unseen." Each word landed like a stone, heavy with truth. My mother's fingers froze on her necklace. My father stared at the floor, his jaw tight. I stood, my voice low but clear. "You lied," I said, looking straight at them. "You forged letters, gave Esther a fake address, told her I'd abandon him." My mother opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "You told me the funeral was at 6. I stood in an empty church thinking I'd failed him." My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. "You erased me." Daphne's head snapped up, her eyes wet. "It wasn't just me," she said, her voice shaking. "They told me what to say, what to do." She pointed at our parents, her hand trembling. "They said you didn't deserve it, that you'd waste his legacy." The room stilled, her words a crack in the family's armor. I blinked, caught off guard. Daphne, the golden child, wasn't just complicit, she was cornered. Then came the twist, sharp and raw. She reached into her bag,
pulling out a small leather journal. "I wrote it down," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every lie they made me tell, every time I felt sick about it." She slid it across the table toward me, her hands unsteady. I didn't know how to stop. I stared at the journal, its pages a confession I hadn't expected. Esther's voice cut through, cold and unyielding. "You all chose this," she said, standing tall despite her 75 years. "You turned your back on Mari, on Walter's wishes. You're not welcome here anymore." My mother gasped, "Esther, please!" But Esther raised a hand. "Out. Now." Her words were final, a door slamming shut on years of their control. My father stood, his face a mask of defeat. "This isn't over, Mari," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. My mother followed, her heels clicking, her silence louder than any protest. Daphne hesitated, her journal still on the table. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so soft I almost missed it. Then she left, her footsteps fading into the night. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like freedom. I picked up the journal, its leather warm under my fingers. My anger didn't vanish, but it softened, tangled with something new. Pity, maybe, for Daphne's trapped heart. I looked at Esther, her eyes fierce but tired. "They'll try to fight this," I said. She nodded. "Let them. They can't touch what's yours." I clutched the box tighter, Grandpa's words from the video replaying in my mind. "You were never less." For the first time, I believed it. The greenhouse, the money, the truth. They were mine, not because I fought for them, but because he'd seen me when no one else did. My family had tried to bury me, but I was the one standing now. The greenhouse stood at the edge of the Illinois farmland, its glass panes catching the morning light like a promise kept. I was 28, and stepping inside felt like crossing a threshold into a world my grandfather had built just for me. The air hummed with the scent of rich soil and green life, rows of seedlings stretching toward the sun. I set the locked box on a workbench, its weight no longer a burden, but a tether to his belief in me.
I'd spent days replaying the confrontation, Daphne's journal still unopened in my bag. Her whispered apology lingered, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Instead, I walked the greenhouse, touching the cool metal of microscopes, the smooth data tablets, the neatly labeled jars of seeds. This wasn't just a gift, it was a challenge. Grandpa had seen my sketches of crop cycles, my obsession with how roots could heal barren land. He trusted me to carry it forward. I started small, inviting local kids to the greenhouse for a community garden project. Their laughter, their dirt-streaked hands reminded me of myself at 10, digging beside Grandpa while he told stories of soil that remembered kindness. One afternoon, while rearranging a shelf, I found it, a hidden journal tucked behind a box of soil samples. Its leather cover was worn, his handwriting unmistakable. My breath caught. The journal wasn't just notes, it was his unpublished research on drought-resistant crops, pages of formulas and observations, each one a piece of his heart. Tucked inside was a note, short and fierce. "Mari, share this freely. They tried to sell it. You'll make it live." My eyes stung. He'd known my family's greed, known they'd try to bury his work. This was his final rebellion, and he'd chosen me to lead it. I sat on the greenhouse floor, the journal open in my lap, sunlight streaming through the glass. For years, I'd carried my family's dismissal like a bruise. Every sigh when I talked science,
every comparison to Daphne's shine. But here, in this space, I didn't need their approval. I felt it then, a quiet shift, like roots breaking through stone. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was home. The kids came every weekend, planting rows of lettuce and beans, their questions as endless as mine used to be. One girl, Leela, 12, showed me her notebook, scribbled with notes on root growth. "Is this stupid?" she asked, eyes shy. I smiled, handing her a pen. "It's brilliant," I said. Her grin lit up the room, and I saw myself in her, the girl who'd once hidden her ideas to avoid being laughed at. We started testing Grandpa's research, tweaking his formulas with the kids' help. Some plants failed, wilting under our mistakes, but each failure felt like progress. The greenhouse wasn't just a lab, it was a place where being curious wasn't a flaw. I thought of Grandpa's note, his voice clear in my mind. Share this freely. So I did, posting our findings online, inviting farmers to try our seeds. The first thank you letter from a family whose crops survived dry summer made me cry. I looked out at the garden, the kids' plots thriving beside our test beds. The journal lay open on the workbench, its pages worn but alive. My family had tried to erase me, but I was building something they couldn't touch. And for the first time, I didn't need their eyes on me to know I was enough. 5 years later, the greenhouse gleamed under the Illinois sky, its glass walls a beacon for local farmers. I was 33 now, and the community garden had grown into a network, our drought-resistant crops feeding families across 3 counties. I stood by the workbench, my grandfather's journal open, its pages worn from use. His legacy wasn't just seeds, it was hope, rooted deep. I'd built something real here. Kids like Lila, now 17, led workshops, teaching others how to coax life from stubborn soil. Farmers shared our seeds, their fields green despite the harshest summers. Last month, we won a national grant, and I stood on a stage in Chicago, my grandfather's pocket watch tucked in my jacket, its ticking a quiet reminder of who believed in me first. Daphne surprised me one spring. She showed up, no scarf, no polish, just a navy coat and nervous hands. "I want to see it," she said, eyes on the greenhouse. I gave her the tour, rows of thriving plants, kids' drawings pinned to a corkboard, data screens glowing with our latest trials. She asked questions, real ones, about yields and soil pH. At the garden's edge, she stopped, watching a family harvest carrots. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, her voice low. She handed me a letter and a check, $1 million, her donation to our work. The letter wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was honest. "I was wrong about you," it read. "I'm trying to be better." I didn't hug her, but I nodded. She started volunteering, teaching kids how to present their ideas with confidence. They called her Coach D, and she smiled, softer each time. We're not sisters like in storybooks, but twice a year, Daphne is here, her hands in the dirt, her laughter mingling with the kids. It's not closure, it's a start. My parents faded away, their names in emails I don't open, their lives a distant hum in Florida. I don't hate them, I just don't need them anymore. Every evening, I walk to the bench Grandpa built, the stars clear above the fields. I think of the girl I was at 28, unsure if she mattered. Grandpa saw her, gave her a place to grow. Legacy isn't money or land. It's the courage to keep asking why, even when no one listens. It's planting something new, knowing it'll outlast you. So plant your own seeds, wherever your ground is. Tend them, even when it's hard. One day they'll bloom and you'll see you were always enough. If this story moved you, like, share, and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel for more tales of heart and grit. Keep growing.